we love when we can bring them both together and help people use their VA loan to buy multifamily property. So any questions on those areas, any one of our team members could help talk through it. And yeah, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to the STR GOAT, Kirby himself, and let's take a look. Thanks, Sam. Thanks again.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me up here. I feel like this is kind of full circle because Andrew put together a group of veterans about 8 years ago that we met with Joey and JD and a bunch of other vets every quarter. It's on a Saturday, and we get together and just talk real estate investing, and so it's cool, like 8 years later, to have this group. And
COVID really screwed that up.
Yeah, so Andrew did promise me there'd be no Naval Academy grads here tonight, so that was kind of nice. Yeah, we'll allow the Air Force grad. No, I'm excited to talk to you tonight. You know, when I was thinking about what to share, I was thinking, like, really what I think would be most helpful is to, like, speak as if I was talking to myself back in 2011 when I was getting out of the Army and just getting into real estate for the first time, because I've learned a lot since then. That was like 14 years ago at this point, and it's been, like Sam said, a path just like this, where it's, you know, some up, some down. I've learned a ton of lessons along the way and made every single possible mistake I think you can make. So I just want to share my journey first, and then I'll talk about our strategy, which has really kind of changed my family's financial future. So just to introduce myself. So again, I'm Kirby Atwell, and this is like pretty much sums up my life now. So I'm married. We've got 3 young kids. We like to travel. This is a picture from Montana. We were out there 2 weeks ago for a couple weeks with the kids. And then when I'm not traveling, I live on a farm in Valparaiso. So we have 45 acres, and that's my version of lifestyle by design. I love it out there. I don't leave the farm much. It's rare to come into the city. It's fun every now and then, but that's what we like doing. And that's kind of, you know, we feel blessed now to not have to work W-2 jobs because of the income from our properties, and because of this strategy that I'm going to share with you tonight. But that's not how it always has been. You know, like all of you, I served in the military, and I grew up here in Chicago in the south suburbs, graduated 2000, went to West Point, and then did 6 years as an officer after that. So I bought a couple of properties. Andrew and I were both stationed in beautiful El Paso, Texas, just like the mecca of real estate investing right there. So I bought a couple properties there in El Paso. You were there?
No, what year were you?
I was 05, so I was there for a couple of years before.
Yeah, prior to. So yeah.
So yeah, no problem. So yeah, and then I got out in 2011, and I came back to Chicago, and my goal was to get into real estate investing. And I didn't know what I didn't know, and it was a very difficult process, transition. So initially, just went out and started trying to find some deals, and found a couple deals, started doing a few, and then I partnered with a couple friends of mine, and we started a flipping company. And we started flipping, and we realized that it was sort of this process of making a little bit of money and then putting it all back in your business. And so we started doing all the things that looked like success, all the vanity metrics. Like, you know, we went out and got an office. We hired a staff because we thought all the successful, you know, flippers have a staff. We put a ton of money into marketing. Like, we were doing all these things that just kind of looked like success, but we never had any money at the end of the month. So it was tough. It was tough growth, but we started to get a little bit of traction, and we flipped about 70 houses around the Chicago area. And this is some of the houses that we flipped from 2011 to 2016. But in 2016, I realized I was kind of like one of these cars here. It was like this giant circle, like, and we kept thinking more volume. Like, if we just do more volume, the spreadsheet shows us that we're going to make a lot more money. And as we did more volume and we did higher end deals, it was like this giant circle. So we'd put a whole bunch of money into marketing. We'd get leads coming in the door. So we'd have to hire people to handle the leads. we go out, meet the sellers, eventually maybe get a property under contract, start the whole rehab process. Hopefully that goes okay. Then we'd stage the property, go through the whole selling process, get a property under contract. They'd come in with a huge punch list. Maybe we'd make a little money, pay taxes on that, then have a tiny bit left over to, invest back into the property and eke out a living, and pay for our groceries at the end of the month. So we realized after 5 years, I'm a slow learner. After 5 years, I realized this is not going to get me to a place of financial freedom. I'm going to die on this treadmill. So in 2016, I've been married. I got married in 2015, and now all of a sudden, I was thinking through the lens of, instead of just like myself, like thinking about like, what do I want? Now it's like us, like, what do we want? And that kind of changes your perspective. And previously I had been like just mimicking what looked like success. And then in 2016, we decided, what do we actually want for our future? Like, what do we want it to look like? And we realized we don't care about stuff at all. We just wanted freedom. We wanted autonomy, and we never wanted anyone to tell us where to be and what we had to do. And we also wanted to make an impact on other people. And we realized we couldn't do that working 40 plus hours a week. It left very little time for anything else. We wanted to start a family. So we decided that we really needed to start buying assets that would pay us. And so we started investing in long-term rentals initially. And most of these are in the south suburbs of Chicago. We bought about 26 properties. Most of them were single-family homes. And we were doing Section 8 and a lot of HUD VASH, for homeless veterans. And in 2017, a year later, we decided to move over to Northwest Indiana. We decided to leave Chicago and move to Northwest Indiana, where we're at now. And we bought this house in Beverly Shores, Indiana. If you're familiar with it, it's right along Lake Michigan. And you can see it's pretty beautiful. It was all like original 1970s inside, but we saw the potential. And the one thing that it had was this unfinished walkout basement. And so this is 2017, and I kept hearing people talk about this Airbnb thing. It wasn't really like that big at the time, but my wife and I were trying to figure out what to do with the basement. We're like, why don't we just finish it, try this thing out? What's the worst that can happen? Like we could always convert it to a long-term rental. It probably adds a bunch of equity to the house anyway. So that's what we did. So we finished the basement, turned it into a little one-bedroom apartment, and we listed it right before Memorial Day, and it booked up the entire summer. Like, I don't think we had a single day open that whole first summer, and we made $22,000 over that first summer. And I was sitting there at the end of the summer, I'm like, I have single family homes that don't make $22,000 all year long, and we just made this on this dinky little apartment in our basement just in a few months in the summer. So I was like, there's something to this, and I think if we replicate this on a larger scale with other houses, it could be something. So that's what we did. We went out then and bought a property in Michigan City right next door to where we were living, and it was a property that, again, we were kind of testing it out. We're like, okay, if it doesn't work out, we can use it as a long-term rental, but we'll try it out as a short-term rental. And it just booked out like crazy, and it worked out really well. So after that, we started buying a lot more. And we set the initial goal of 8 properties, because I was like, if we could just do this 8 times with the one that's working for us, I can leave my full-time job. And so that's what we did pretty quickly. And since then, we figured out some things, how to really optimize for the right property that cash flows really, really well. And now our so now our average is about $2,000 a month. Some of them are higher than that now. Some are a little bit lower than that. But most of them are multi-unit properties, 2 to 4 units like you're talking about. And they just work phenomenally well, especially in these more affordable markets. So I'm going to talk about the difference tonight between what most people think of with short-term rentals and what I feel like works really, really well. So anyways, I'm going to talk through the opportunity that exists out there right now. So I think the best way to demonstrate is with an example. Some of you guys might know Brian Lucas. Yeah, he's a West Point grad, also he's an Army guy. So I started working with him a few months ago on this strategy. And this is property that he just purchased. So you can see the closing date was 8/26. He bought it for 240. So he's a guy who had a similar realization that I did. He owned a construction company.
Yeah, he's doing development work.
A couple of guys in Denver. And he was like, this sucks. Like, I'm working insane hours, just grinding it out every day, looking for new clients all the time. And so he wanted to create some income. And so started working together, and he identified Bristol, Tennessee as an opportunity, which a lot of people wouldn't think of as a short-term rental market. But he found this property. It's a 2-unit property. You can see these are the listing pictures, so it's very turnkey property for $240,000. And these are the numbers. So paid $240, put about $10,000 into rehab, $20,000 in furnishing. So he's all in for $270. And then his unit 1, which is the 2-bedroom unit on top, and these are super conservative numbers. I always recommend look at the comps that are, the other short-term rentals out there, and there's always going to be a range. Use the most conservative end of the range. You're going into it with the worst case scenario. So that's what this is. So this is based on $123 a night average rate, and this one's $103 a night average rate at like a 56% occupancy or 60% occupancy, something like that. So very conservative, and he'll bring in about $4,000 a month, and then these are his expenses here. And there's obviously more expenses on a short-term rental. You got to pay the utilities, you got to pay for lawn care. So he's got about $2,000 in expenses. I put at the bottom, there's no cleaning fee included. A lot of people ask, what about the cleaning fee? You charge that separate in addition to the nightly rate, and then you pay your cleaners that. So it's kind of a pass-through expense. But his net cash flow after he's put aside money for maintenance, for consumables, he's at just under $2,000 a month on this property. Real turnkey. He lives in Denver. He's managing it himself using some systems that are pretty easy to put in place. So he's creating some pretty significant cash flow.
What's the personal residence of before Unit 4? It's a personal residence.
Sorry?
Unit 4 personal residence.
Where's he saying? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't believe it. That was I was using this as a template thing.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm like, you think it's $2,000 and live there for free?
There is, I was showing one.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Bristol, here we go.
Yeah, somebody I know in Valparaiso, where we're at, has a 4-unit, but they live in one, rent out the other 3 as short-term rentals. But the numbers are dumb. But I wanted to show you a veteran example here. This thing's I think it's blocks, maybe. So obviously, like, if you're making $2,000 in net cash flow a month, it doesn't take a whole lot of these for most people to get to a place of financial freedom. But the key is buying the right properties. What most people, like, I hear a lot of people say, well, short-term rentals don't work, or short-term rentals, that's true. That's like saying all cars don't work, or all restaurants, putting them all in the same category, or all medicine, like any big group of anything, there's going to be different sectors inside of it. And I agree that there's a lot of short-term rentals out there that don't ink. They don't make sense. I would stay away from them today, but there's also some incredible opportunities that a lot of people just aren't seeing right now. So this is what I think most people think of when they hear the term vacation rental or short-term rental or Airbnb. And there's nothing wrong with this type of property, the seashore property, or the mountaintop property, or the Destin Beach, or Gatlinburg, or all the places that you hear about with short-term rentals. They're fine. I wouldn't mind owning that and vacationing there with my family. But if the goal is financial freedom, then I would not recommend starting with this. Like, eventually you own a property like this, but don't start. This isn't where you get the cash flow. Most people don't think about a property like this. This is a very ugly property that we bought this year. It's our most recent, or one of our most recent properties, 1318 Oak Street, Michigan City. And what I believe makes this such an incredible property is not the fact that it's just an ugly house, but it's an ugly house that came with a second ugly house, and it was $95,000. So you got two sources of income coming in on this property. So we bought this one at the end of January. We put some rehab into it, and we transformed it into vacation rentals, into short-term rentals. And so we put about $110,000 into it. It appraised for $347,000, which we were surprised that we didn't expect that. Sometimes you can't, as Sam knows, you can't judge appraisals sometimes. Sometimes they're way low, sometimes they're way high. This was a lot higher than we thought, but even if it came in at $275,000, we would have been really happy. It created some equity. And then here's what the difference is on using this property, this, standard property in a working class neighborhood as a short-term rental as opposed to using it as long-term rental. So all in from 205. Monthly rent would be about $2,000. So the front house would be $1,200, the back house would be about $800. Monthly expenses $1,350 as a long-term rental. And so you're looking at $650 a month in cash. So a lot of people would say that's pretty decent short-term rent or long-term rent, cash flows well. So it's a good backup plan. But as a short-term rental, you put an extra $20,000 into it, furnish the property. 61% occupancy is what we're estimating. We have a lot of properties in that area. Most do better than that, but again, be conservative. Average nightly rate between the two is $320 between the front house and back house. And so the monthly income $7,000. And monthly expenses $42.48 with everything, set aside for maintenance, everything you could need. And so we've got over 4 times the net cash flow on this property using it as a short-term rental. So it makes a massive difference. And the key was that there's multiple units, which is a key to it. And then also it's really inexpensive. So like how it builds up the suspense.
What's gonna happen next?
Yeah. So the question I think is what makes a really solid short-term rental? And this is obviously my opinion. So you can take it or leave it, but there's a list of things that I think if you combine as many of those things as possible, you found yourself a phenomenal in terms of cash flow short-term rental. And now you don't need to have all these things, but the more of them that you can stack on top of each other, the more likely you've got really, really phenomenal cash flow. So first one is just outside of a major city. So you could buy in the city or you could buy just outside. What you find with short-term rentals, and a lot of times, is that same property that I buy in Michigan City, if I bought it downtown Chicago, it'd be 4 to 5 times as much probably. But the nightly rates don't go up 4 to 5 times as much because there's local draws to Michigan City, and it causes the nightly rates to increase. So what I find is the biggest bang for your buck is just outside of a larger city. Local draws to the area. So a lot of people think I need to be right next to Disney World or I need to be right next to the ocean. And that's just not the case. There's so many places just outside of larger cities. Like Michigan City, we've got obviously Lake Michigan in the summertime, but we've also got a big casino, there's a big outlet mall, there's wineries in the area. There's just a lot of stuff that draws people there, in addition to being close to a population center where people are traveling for weddings, funerals, family visits, all the reasons people travel. I don't know if I'm even allowed to talk about this in Chicago.
No.
It's not known as being the most packed, slow bureaucracy. Yeah, when we get hit. Yeah,
That's how you get whacked around.
yeah, exactly. I used to invest in Chicago. Obviously, I remember going to get my first permit. There's a house in Portage Park like a decade ago. After we had done a whole bunch in the suburbs, I went in to get the permit. We were doing a second floor addition on this property, and it was 9 months later that I finally had the permit in hand. And by the time we started the project, the deal was dead. We were already going to lose money on the project from day one, just because of all the back and forth. And that's when I discovered there's a whole industry of greasing the wheels and hiring an expediter to push things through. So I went to Michigan City, went to get my first permit, and the lady's like, here's this paper you got to fill out. It was like a Xerox. You could tell they've been using it for about 20 years. I filled it out. I handed it to her. She goes, all right, here's your permit. And I was like, what? It's like, don't you need to like take me in the back and like beat me up or something? And she's like, that's what we do. We just did it, you know. So the two experience, like if you can choose to be in a place where that's the case, it just makes a huge difference to the bottom line if you can do it. Multiple streams of income, this is huge. Like, you know, it makes such a massive difference in terms of the net cash flow at the end of the day. If you have multiple units that are bringing in a higher than normal income, your net cash flow is going to be really high. This is the ratio that I highly recommend looking for. So if you're trying to find the right market, look at this ratio. So you can go to AirDNA and you can pull up the average nightly rate and average occupancy. That tells you the income level, and then compare that to the average purchase price in that area. And wherever that ratio is the best, most favorable, the most income to the lowest purchase price, most likely that's going to be a really high cash flowing area. This is one that I just recommend highly because, you know, if I had to wake up tomorrow and convert them all to long-term rentals, they would all cash flow, which you can't say about a lot of short-term rentals. And I wouldn't feel really comfortable knowing that they could change a rule or there could be another COVID lockdown and all of a sudden I'm hemorrhaging thousands of dollars a month. So I really recommend that they work as a long-term rental as well. This is one that a lot of people overlook, personal connection. Like people will say, they'll Google, where's the best place to buy a short-term rental? And they've got all these connections in their backyard, or they know like family in a certain area, like they have a connection to a certain area, and they go buy where everyone else is telling them to buy. So this can give you a huge leg up by some sort of, you know, competitive advantage, whether it's, you know, relationships or just a skill set that you have. And then the final thing is in the path of progress. So again, like you can Google where's the best place to buy a short-term rental, and they'll tell you where everyone has already bought short-term rentals.
It's rear looking.
What's that?
It's rear looking.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
the data's already old by then.
Yeah. It's like buying a stock that's already appreciated. You know, like it might be history might indicate the future, but it might not at the same time. So what I feel like is a much better strategy, what's really benefited me is to look at areas where you think it's improving, where infrastructure is being put in, where new amenities are being put in, where decision making is heading in the right direction. You know, like Michigan City, it's not like I wouldn't say it's like the mecca of short-term rentals by any means, but they're closing down this huge power plant that blocks half the lakefront there, which was a bad deal from the past. They're closing down. They just closed down a jail in town, moving that out. So they're doing things that are heading in the right direction. There's a lot of new development. So by buying there, you're getting a great deal today and getting thousands of dollars of cash flow every month in a perpetuity while you sit on a property that's being paid off by your guests and it's increasing in value over time. So here's an example to show you like real numbers. So this is Scottsdale. A lot of people know Scottsdale as a good short-term rental market. And you can see this is from AirDNA. You can see the occupancy rate is 61%, which is pretty good. The average daily rate is $345. And you can see there's a lot of short-term, a lot of people are doing short-term rentals. So you figure, you know, that's a pretty good place. Most people say that's a good place to go buy a short-term rental because a lot of people are just looking at the income side of the equation.
What's AirDNA for those that don't know what it is?
Yeah, AirDNA.co is just an analytics site. It'll tell you in any town or city, you know, what the averages are. So you compare that to a place like Sheboygan, Wisconsin, right? A lot of people don't even know what Sheboygan is.
Joey does.
It's you know,
from there.
oh, nice. Yeah, see. So it's basically just straightforward before you get to Green Bay on the lake. And so you look at here and you're like, okay, this must not be as good of a place to invest in short-term rental, right? Because it's 51% occupancy, 284 standard rent. So that's a lower average income there's only 301 people who have short-term rentals. But if you look at the whole picture, if you're into cash flow and you're into ROI, you gotta look at the whole picture. So, Scottsdale, again, 335, multiplied by 61%, multiplied by 365. This is how much you will make with the average property. Obviously, there's a lot of variables. We're just talking averages right now. So you put that over the average list price of $999,300, and for every dollar that you invest into a short-term rental in Scottsdale, you're going to make 7.6%, right? So, it might be okay. That might be what you're targeting. If you do some rough math, you're probably going to realize there's not a lot of cash flow in that type of deal. But if you look at Sheboygan, you're making $24,000 less annually. But when you put it over the average purchase price in Sheboygan of $236,000, you're making 22.4%, which is a lot more cash flow. And then if you optimize it by buying a multi-unit that's bringing in multiple streams of income, at that average $284 rent is going in a ballpark, you can buy over 4 of these properties for 1 of these. So if you multiply this top number by 4, it is much, much higher than this number. So that's why these value areas where nobody's even considering it just do phenomenally well. Here's another example, Air Force guy that I work with. Just started working with him about a month ago, and he's out in California. His name's Luke Fisher, and if you don't know where Sheboygan is, you definitely don't know where Salt Lake, Michigan is, because this is way out there.
Coast Guard unit up there, and I ran into some people stationed up there.
Okay. Man, they must have been last in their class.
There are worse places.
So it's right on the Canadian border, Upper Peninsula. And again, like, who's going to consider Salt Lake to be short-term rental area? Like, most people, you tell them that, and they're like, you're delusional. Like, it's not going to work. But you can buy a 2-unit, almost turnkey. You see the listing pictures here. It was used as a long-term rental previously for $150,000. So when you look at the numbers here, you actually so Luke just kind of followed the system and started doing research and looking for that ratio. We came across Salt Lake, and what is it? Susane. So we realized it's 56% occupancy, $207 average daily rate. The average purchase price is super low, but there's actually a decent population there. It's a border town. There's a lot of people coming through. They're doing a ton of development in that area. So then he dug into the comps on Airbnb, which I recommend as the next step. And you can see, 4.9 star rating, 67 reviews, 125 reviews, 120 reviews, 50 reviews, 135. So all these houses in the area are getting booked up. There's actually a demand there. And when you look at their calendars, you can see that there's bookings coming up in the future, and then you can see the history of the bookings and reviews, and see that there's actually a future name. So when you look at these numbers, 141.8 is this purchase price. He just got this under contract last week. So these are projected numbers. Again, very conservative numbers. He's projecting 46 on theirs just to be extra conservative. He hasn't been to the property, probably never will go to the property. 21,000 furnishings. So he's all in for just over $200,000 on this property. And this is the conservative investment. $163 average, and that's more in the summer and less in the winter. So it's average throughout the year. The one unit, and then the smaller one's 110. 60% occupancy. He's going to bring in about $70,000 of gross cash flow with about $41,000 in expenses. So he's cash flowing just under $2,500 a month on a property that he's paying $200,000. So when you look at the cash on cash return on something like this, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm targeting a 10% cash on cash return on my rental property. It's not even like close. This is probably like a 40% cash on cash return. He puts down 20% down payment. on this property. So I think he's going to do a hard money loan, rehab it, refinance it, and he'll create some equity. And at that point, the cash shut down off the chart. So to wrap it all up, this is a question that really like changed my direction of my business, because I realized once we saw what was possible with this, then we started asking ourselves, okay, if we just owned a few of these properties, like what will that do for us? And 3.5 years ago, I left my full-time job once we got to 8. Now we have 33 listings deal, and I've just started working with people to help them do the same thing as well. So, if you're interested in this strategy, I work with a ton of veterans to help them implement the strategy. I've got programs that walks you through it step by step. So you can book a call with me if you talk about it. It's not like a pressure sales call or anything. You just talk to your goals to see fit. That's a link to my calendar there. And I'll open it up for any questions.